Hey Sergio, thank you for joining us for our Star Trek Discovery review. What did you think of the movie show pilot?
I liked the woman from Star Trek V who drowned in the pool table.
Is that the cat?
She was a cat.
The cat woman, yeah, okay, yeah, the weird cat lady.
The three-breasted cat woman who obviously had a string on her tail and
felt like it was William Shatner's fetish coming alive.
Shatner threw her over his shoulder onto the liquid pool table, and she just sort of dies. that movie's so cheap.
So what we're saying is the bar isn't that high for good Star Trek.
For good Star Trek.
For good Star Trek,
the bar is high. For all Star Trek, the bar is... Oh, dear.
Serge, you escaping? You done?
I think he's done
with
our
us?
Star Trek review.
You're tired of our...
He's a Star Wars
No, he's just hanging out here. He just wants to hang out on my leg.
Hey, Patreon subscribers.
Hi.
You came to watch us play with a cat.
You always do. But we're also going to talk about Star Trek Discovery, which premiered last weekend on CBS, and then all subsequent episodes are going to be on CBS All Access. And I've only seen the first episode, the one that aired on network television. Whitney, did you see both? Or?
I saw the first two because I ponied up and did the CBS All Access.
Okay, so I've only seen the first one, so this should be interesting. Right. Maybe you can tell me some good stuff. So why don't you guide us a little bit? What is it?
All right. Well, it's the first Star Trek series since J.J. Abrams tried to reboot it, but it takes place in the original continuity as the original TV show. It takes place 10 years before the events of the original TV show. And it doesn't take place on the Enterprise and only involves a few characters we're familiar with. Mm-hmm. Most notably Sarek, originally played by Mark Lenard, who played Spock's dad in the original show and on The Next Generation.
Well, Sarek is Spock's dad. Sarek didn't play Spock's dad. No. Just for clarity's sake.
The character Sarek.
Spock's dad is a character on the show.
As it turns out, Sarek was the, adopted father. It's not... The actual name of their relationship. He's sort of raising a young human woman who is Michael Michael something.
Yeah, and she was orphaned after what apparently seems to be a Klingon attack that killed her family.
And Sarek took her in and raised her on Vulcan.
As more or less a Vulcan, but he does seem to be rather sympathetic to the fact that she's a human, probably because he married a human.
So he's got a thing for humans.
Yeah, he's not anti-human. He just thinks he's better than them, which is very Vulcan. So in the pilot, we meet her captain, played by Michelle Yeoh.
Well, she grew up to become the first officer of a ship called the Shenzhou.
Yeah.
And Michelle Yeoh is the captain of said ship.
And we meet them on a sort of a mini mission where they're trying to, much like at the opening of Star Trek Into Darkness, help save an alien race from extinction, but they're not they haven't achieved faster than light space travel yet, so they can't reveal themselves to these species. So they manage to replenish the water supply, and then they have to
with a phaser, so it's badass.
Awesome. But then there's an electrical storm or something that will trap them on the planet for decades. So they have to signal the ship by walking in the shape of a Starfleet logo, which is cute.
It's cute.
That's an okay little. And what I like about that opening, I like a couple of things about this opening. One, our protagonists Michelle Yeoh and Michael, whose name is I forget the actress's name. I can look it up on my phone, but I'm using it to record. I like their relationship. They're actually coming at different problems from different angles. They're learning from each other. It's clear they've had a long-established relationship together, and they end up solving their problem through positivity and cleverness. And I watched that opening, I'm just like, this feels like Star Trek.
The tone is perfect. They got it just right. And all of the subsequent dialogue about sort of various approaches to common problems and talking about them is something that all Star Trek has done, J.J. Abrams notwithstanding.
To a lesser extent, I think he did it in the first one. I think it's a little bit. I think it got better and beyond.
This is much more about sort of how people who have adopted different life ethoses approach similar problems.
Exactly.
And we go back to the Shenzhou and we get to meet, sadly, not the whole crew. We don't get sort of backgrounds of the ensigns or the lieutenants who are on the bridge.
We mostly focus on...
We see them, I imagine, as the series goes on. We'll get to know some of these characters a little bit more. Probably not, though, because I feel like the pilot isn't done.
And it's called Star Trek Discovery, and we know they're going to get to the Discovery,
and we haven't
which is the name of a ship.
In the first two episodes, we haven't gotten to the Discovery yet. So I'm guessing... the pilot isn't really done.
I'm guessing the characters we spent the most time with are the ones we'll follow along with. We also made a character played by Doug Jones, who I love this character. He comes from a...
He is a Kelpian, and he comes from a species where two species on his planet evolved simultaneously, and his species were the prey of those two.
Yeah, they were the cattle. They were raised literally to be killed. And he has a really great speech about how the one like defining aspect of his culture is that death is inevitably coming for them, and they're really good at sensing it. So they're constantly on edge. And every single thing that happens, they're really nervous about the worst case scenario. And I love this addition to Star Trek. It really is an interesting person to have on the bridge of a ship. Sergio, you done?
Yeah, I guess he's finished. It's also plays right into that wonderful Star Trek stereotype of how every species wears the same hat. Where, you know, every single Klingon, for instance, they're only one species of Klingons on the planet of Klingon.
They're not from different countries that have different ethos.
Yeah, they don't have different languages. They don't have different cultures. They're just one country, one culture on one planet, and they're all devoted to like one singular idea.
Yeah.
On Earth, it seems to be, in most science fiction, in fact, and this was started by Star Trek, it's diplomacy. That's Earth's superpower.
And if you don't follow that ethos, then you are the plot point of the show.
Exactly.
You're the one who's like being a warmonger, or you're the only one who's racist, or thinks that Data doesn't count as a person, or something.
Or you think we should destroy the crystalline entity when really it's just enacting its thing, even though it's eating life by planetfuls.
So there's a consistency here. It's not like humanity is this nuanced culture where all different types of ethoses exist simultaneously and have equal respect. Even humanity is kind of one thing.
Yeah.
And indeed, one of the big dramas of the show is, so they're out to fix a broken relay. They think it may have been an act of intentional sabotage. They run into an ancient...
And it's right by a binary star, so there's a lot of radiation. They can't really see with their sensors so well.
Yeah. And they run into an ancient Klingon artifact. They end up making contact with the Klingons, which Federation hasn't done in like a century, like a really long time.
Yeah.
Not officially in any way. Michael ends up killing the Klingon by accident, and now it could lead to war. What they don't realize is that the Klingons are there's actually a splinter cell of Klingons who are trying to unite the Klingon Empire in war, which is like very much in the Klingon ethos.
And they're trying to unite the 24 houses underneath the single ethos of Kahless, which is kind of where we see the Klingons are at in Next Generation, which was the first time the Klingons were really kind of brought together, as it were.
Yeah.
We saw them in the original series, and they were just sort of like swarthy assholes.
Yeah, they really didn't have this... the way we think of Klingons as a defined species on Star Trek, you look at the original series, they're there and it's pretty good, but it wasn't until, I would say, even Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, that they started really coming together, and then Star Trek 5, Star Trek 6, and then Next Generation.
Which was at the same time as Star Trek 5 and 6.
Exactly, but like that's when they just basically just flat out said... Klingons, they look like this, not like they originally looked. And by the way, they changed the look so that it fits the Abrams verse, which I find confusing and annoying.
And I'm not sure how I feel about the new look.
I don't mind. I wouldn't mind if it was a new alien species, but it looks just enough like Klingons and just enough not like Klingons that I don't know why they bothered.
And I was thinking about, you know, they're going from the original series where it was just like white guys with goatees.
Yeah.
And then they moved to the Next Generation where they had dark skin and those big heads and like an entirely new sort of design. So it's been about as much time since Next Generation went off the air to the start of Discovery that it's okay to start rejiggering their look a little bit, I guess.
A little bit, but it's still the same continuity though, so it's still confusing.
And we've had Enterprise and, you know, other TV shows within there that showed Klingons in sort of the way they looked in Next Generation. So it actually hasn't been that long since we've seen Klingons the way they originally looked.
Yeah, and like the other movies as well. Like it hasn't been that long, in like chronology-wise, since Nemesis. You know, and that was like the last like official, like in terms of the latest in the timeline we've seen, right? Unless there was like a
I think
was there a flash forward in Enterprise that showed us later in the timeline, or
there was, but we didn't see Klingons in the timeline.
My point is that Klingons basically are just changed their look for no particular reason other than I guess they could, which it doesn't bother me too much. It's a pretty big change.
Aesthetically, it doesn't bother me. Again, you said if there were another alien species, that would be a really awesome looking alien species.
Nothing wrong with
big elaborate sets. And
you can
really
even
awesome
say
outfits.
this is like an offshoot of Klingons, like and they left, and then they evolved in a different direction or something.
Yeah.
Much like the Romulans and the quote-unquote Remans from Nemesis,
Yeah,
and how they run different planets,
like
and they just
cousin
became...
species. Yeah, if it was like a cousin species to the Klingons, and they're uniting the regular-looking Klingons, but maybe we'll even see that.
But in any case, so there's this huge event, tensions are flaring. What I think is interesting is that the Federation is basically at odds with each other on the ship, trying to decide what's the best way to not start a war. We have Michelle Yeoh, who is trying to be as diplomatic as possible. We have who's the guy from Rent? Anthony Rapp.
Oh, Anthony Rapp. Yeah.
Yeah, he shows up as like this. I guess an admiral or something who's telling them like, we'll send you reinforcements, don't do anything at all. And then Michael is actually like, and she, even though she has this trauma and makes everyone not trust her opinion on it, she actually contacts Sarek and says, hey, the Vulcans don't have a beef with the Klingons, what did you do? And Sarek says, it might not be useful in this situation, but here's what we did. And it turns out...
Shoot first.
Yeah, the episode is called The Vulcan Hello, and it refers to this, the idea that the Klingons respond to...
Force,
displays of power. If you seem strong, they'll respect you, and they will move away. So if you attack first, the Klingons will theoretically go, oh, shit, all right, well, fair enough. But
and for some reason, our main character decides this is definitely the way they gotta go. Michelle Yeoh says, no, we don't do that. We're the Federation. We don't shoot first. And this makes her like so incensed that she uses the Vulcan neck pinch on Michelle Yeoh, knocks her out, and essentially tries to commandeer the ship so she can try her.
Now, I've seen
technique.
Riker do shit like that. I've seen other characters on like Next Generation or Deep Space Nine who were so convinced that they were right and the bureaucracy wouldn't trust them, and it turns out they were right and they all needed to trust each other and be a family. But here, the situation is so elevated, it's so tense, and we don't know these people, that I really like this element. I really like the idea of, here is...
That she's going to do something reckless right away.
They're trying to start a war. How do we not start a war? Everyone disagrees with each other, and it really is that big. It is that huge. It's basically just, if we don't do exactly the right thing, a lot of people are going to die. I like that level of intensity, and I like the way that the various characters that we meet, not too many, only about 3 main characters, but I like the way that they all were thinking they were doing the right thing, and they were debating it, and they were trying to understand each other, and
they make, and it turns out they make a very bad decision. Now, I'm not sure if what happened.
Haven't seen the next episode.
Okay, well, I can tell you what happened.
Go ahead and tell me. It's fine.
Okay. They make the wrong decision.
What's the wrong decision?
Well, a bunch of Federation ships show up, and a bunch of Klingon ships show up. Like
it's a standoff.
It's a standoff. They light up. The Klingons light up this gigantic beacon, and it summons all of like the Klingon forces, and they're in Federation space, and the Klingons are all there, ready to sort of do away with the Federation because they don't like their UN-like thinking. It's like, you're just going to erase our culture by folding it into your own. I don't like that. We're going to defeat you instead.
Which is an attitude we've seen, in various eras throughout history as colonialism has affected.
Or just in various nations in the world today.
Well, yeah.
It's something that, that's really worth having on a science fiction show.
It's perfectly valid.
And the Federation ships all show up, and the Klingons say, oh, good, there's a bunch of you here. That means you're an army. And the guns start going off, and the Federation fleet is pretty much wiped out. And they realize, oh crap, well, the Shenzhou is like really, really damaged. A lot of people have died. Our main character's been sent to the brig.
Yeah.
So she's off in the brig, and the ship is actually so damaged that the brig has to sort of like rebuild itself around her. She's like just behind a force field looking out onto open space throughout most of the episodes.
That's
like,
cool.
Oh, well,
that's cool.
Kind of screwed. And she actually has to argue with the computer. Well, if there were a power surge, I would die. Yes, you would die. Well, that's unethical. Yes, that's unethical. So the unethical thing would be for you, computer, to let me free. Well, I guess you're right.
It's been a while since I've seen that, arguing logic with the computer and winning trope.
She argues logic with the computer and the computer lets her out. She, of course, has to like leap through open space to like the next hallway over, which is pretty fun.
I wish you could see this audience. Sergio is on both of our laps simultaneously, like a bridge, like over a chasm. Just, it's pretty damn cute, I'm not gonna lie. That's why I keep looking downward. I know it's weird. Okay. Yes.
I'm not stroking his stomach.
It's stroking the cat. Yeah, the cat's fine. Hey, Serge.
So yeah, she and Michelle Yeoh get together. It's like, hey, I thought I put you in the brig. Well, you did, but now we're. And they're
does it really matter anymore? They're really like quick. That kind of thing.
They even say right away, well, we're at war. It's like there's no are we at war? Can this be salvaged? They just know they're at war. And
No sense in denying it.
I guess so.
They wiped out a fleet. What are you going to do? We're at fucking war right now. Even if we declare peace
feel
tomorrow,
like
you're at war, right?
I feel like in something like Deep Space Nine, it's like there's this huge altercation, hundreds of people died. Wait a minute, we can walk this back. We can spin this.
But while you're in the middle of the altercation, you're at war. They're not pretending.
So a lot of people are dead. The ships are all trashed, and they say, well, there's a way we can destroy that gigantic Klingon ship over there. We can essentially. We can
tech the tech.
We can beam a photon torpedo on board, which is something Harry Kim figured out.
Although if memory serves, I believe Scotty did that in his Kobayashi Maru test.
Oh, did he?
There was like a short story collection. It was basically about how everyone in the original series, just how they handled their Kobayashi Maru test.
I haven't even read.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. It's my understanding that Scotty actually just fought off. Like, it was the Klingons in that one, right?
It was Klingons,
he fought off the Klingons for like a really long time, and that was one of the maneuvers he did.
It was beaming a torpedo on board.
Yeah, thought that was fun.
And they say, well, we can do that, but what we really ought to do is beam on board and capture the Klingon later. His name is T'Kuvma. Mm-hmm. And we have to capture him and sort of shame him to show the Klingons that we are more powerful rather than make him into a martyr.
Smart.
So she and Michelle Yeoh beam aboard the ship with guns.
This sounds like a cool episode.
Trying to take the Klingon leader.
This sounds really cool.
And oops, Michelle Yeoh is murdered. So character's gone.
That's fine. You can't get Michelle Yeoh for forever.
And you knew she was going to die because she had a special guest appearance by credit. So
yeah. I was surprised she made it out of the pilot, honestly, like the first episode.
Well, and like I said, I don't feel like we're done with the pilot yet.
Well,
I think
it's
the
my
first 3 or 4 are going to be
I think the whole series is supposed to be kind of like this, isn't it? Isn't it supposed to be like one season, just one story? Like,
it is, but we haven't settled into like sort of one location yet. And it's called
we haven't gotten to the Discovery.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the Discovery. Yeah. So at the end of this episode, she beams back. They accidentally kill this guy anyway. They don't capture him. So they're
so it's a completely useless maneuver.
Completely useless. Yeah. She got her captain killed. We get to see her at her court martial. She pleads guilty to all charges, and she's being taken away to serve time. And presumably, because that's where we leave off, presumably she's going to be taken to the Discovery to be transferred.
Oh, so she's going to be the Tom Paris.
And yeah, she's going to be the Tom Paris of the series. So somebody watched Star Trek Voyager and thought, I like this Voyager, but it should be all about the Tom Paris character.
So it's like Voyager. They thought that was supposed to be all about Tom Paris for a while. They thought Tom Paris was going to be like the big breakout character. Everyone's going to want to be Tom Paris.
I went to a Star Trek convention where one of the producers of the show taught, like, this isn't like the second season of Voyager.
Yeah, I think you told me this story.
96 or so, but he came out and was like, and they were showing just like, production stills, things that audiences don't ordinarily get to see, and like, here's a shot of Chakotay, and all of the women in the audience went, ooh la la, Chakotay. And he looked out in the audience and was like, we don't get it. We set up Tom Paris to be the sex bomb for you girls. He's this young, handsome, blonde dude. And you are drooling over this other character that we had no idea was going to be a sex bomb.
Because that other character has dignity. That other character is cool.
It's actually kind of cool. Tom Paris is just kind of a brat.
Tom Paris is the guy you tell people. Tom Paris is the Poochie of Star Trek Voyager. They just told you he's cool. He didn't actually do anything cool.
I always thought that was 7 of 9, but okay.
No, well, I guess it's showing up late, but 7 of 9 was actually an interesting character. There actually is a reason why.
Not as interesting as the amount of screen time she got.
Perhaps not, but my point is that there's a reason for her. There's actually like, we're gonna like do for the Borg what we like did for the Klingons in Next Generation, or what we did with the Vulcans. Just like show like a species interacting with humanity and the Federation for the first time, and that makes perfect sense, especially considering how much we built up the Borg. That makes sense. Tom Paris, on the other hand, is basically, you like him, don't you? He's dreamy. That's all we got. That's it. That's all we got.
Now, I do like our main character. She was raised as a Vulcan, but she's clearly already learned to be human. Mm-hmm. So she gets to talk about how she is using her emotions to inform her logic and feels that she's come to a better place.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's great.
I like that.
It's kind of the opposite of Spock.
I like that there's been a lot of discussion. It's not action-centric. I actually kind of love it so far.
I actually, I really dug it. It feels...
I'm waiting for it to kind of get chugging, but we'll see.
Fair enough. I know you love the episodic Star Trek, and I know we had a long debate on Twitter about how much this show is emphasizing war.
Well, my only central beef is when they decided to set the show, which is right on...
Which right on the cusp of the Klingon War.
Yeah, if you're a Trekkie, this is like a big war that they alluded to in the original series.
This is canon. This already happened. Everyone knows the gist of it already.
In setting Star Trek, specifically setting a Star Trek show during a war, when the whole notion of diplomacy is destined to fail doesn't sit quite well with me because I've seen so many war narratives and fantasy.
Right, but I love it when Star
recently.
Trek handles it because they're actually handling it very intelligently
Yeah,
so
well-
far, based on what I've seen. Which is, again, they're trying not to. It's all
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the effort. And the thing is, and it's
The
interesting
problem,
to see
my problem is that I know they're going to fail.
Well,
so.
of course, but like again, we were having this argument, and I was looking at this like I would any period piece about World War I or World War II. I know there's going to be a war. It's still interesting to see people try.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see what happened, how it happened, and I thought the way that they handled it was very organic, very in keeping with Trek, even though it does tackle war. And Star Trek has tackled war a lot. There's a lot of war episodes. The original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine was all about war.
Yeah.
By the last few seasons, Enterprise as well. But I guess my point is this: it's like, it's really, really relevant, and I think what they're trying to do by trying to set this up with this particular group of Klingons as an extremist sect of Klingon, I think they're trying to sort of equate this to what we're seeing in the Middle East with ISIS, and they're trying to talk about
like
contemporary
the
issues with war.
Took over the government for a little bit.
Exactly, and that's a sort of thing where, and I realize the issue in the Middle East is way more complicated than that. Star Trek is using it as a bit of an allegory. They have always done that, and I think using Star Trek to tackle what we're seeing now is totally on the table. I think it's a fair thing to do, and I think they've handled it in a way that feels like Star Trek more than maybe with the exception of Beyond, which I know we both really, really liked. It feels like Star Trek for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
It really does, even if it's tackling sort of less than normal Trekkie things.
I know they were trying to kind of depart from a lot of that with Enterprise, and they were trying to do sort of like these multiple episode arcs. I'm reading a lot of think pieces from people who have clearly not seen Deep Space Nine or Enterprise. Like, and this is the first time Star Trek has done that. No. It's the...
Even in the movies, they did it.
Yeah,
I mean, we were 6. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. That's all about war. It's about the end of a war, but it's all about war and warmongering and sects of the Klingon Empire who are trying to keep a war going, even if it's not in their best interest.
And it's a really strong allegory to the coming down of the Berlin Wall,
Yeah.
the fall of communism. So it's actually a really great movie. That's
Are you
really
and I both on the
politically
same
salient.
page still that that's the best Star Trek movie?
I will make my argument for Star Trek the Motion Picture, but Star Trek 6 is probably my favorite.
I think it's pinnacle
Probably like
Star Trek
like
movie.
the one I can watch the most.
It's really funny. It's really thoughtful. All the characters are in character, doing interesting things, challenged in ways they're not challenged in otherwise, and it's really relevant.
And they're each allowed to sort of apply their skills in an interesting way.
And it's heavy, but it's hopeful, and I like that.
And it's beyond that, and we had to give this character something to do in this scene sort of way.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in other, like, every single character. That's for me, is the mark of a great Star Trek movie. You can do it in a TV show where characters don't have a lot to do because they'll get something to do in the next episode. In
You
a
can
movie,
have a shorty episode.
in a movie, you really, it could be 3 or 4 years before you see the crew again, so you want to see them all utilized. That's another thing that only I think the Beyond does in the J.J. Abrams movies is gives everyone something to do, and it's one of the reasons why I like it so much. But yeah,
It's also not a J.J. Abrams movie.
but it's a J.J. Abrams verse, and
Yeah,
he produced it, so he had the input.
The Kelvin verse.
Regardless, the best Trek movies give everyone something to do. And even
But because you
Yeah.
look at something like Star Trek Nemesis,
they're all doing
there's
stuff.
I remember reading interview because I was like at the height of my Trekkiedom in '94 when Generations came out, and I remember reading like interviews where everybody's getting really excited about making this movie, and Gates McFadden, who played Dr. Crusher, said like her character has like nothing to do for like 3/4 of the movie. She's just sort of another person in the background.
Which, to be fair,
And
happened
there was-
a lot in the show too.
Yeah, and Troy says she has nothing to do in this movie either.
Yeah.
And Miriam Sirtis even said that she was happy that they got to. There was a bit where the ship is crashing, and
She got to take the bridge.
and
that was cool.
And Riker says, "Troy, take the helm," and she just runs up and starts pushing at some buttons, and then the ship crashes. So that's what you got to do? You got to crash the ship? Oh,
Someone had to
jeez.
do it. That is not the first time a woman has taken the helm of the Enterprise, though. You may recall.
Well, it happened all the time in Next Generation.
It happened all the time in Next Generation. I remember, though, but I remember...
Just incidental people were at the con and op station.
Someone was talking about, I think Scott Mantz corrected Neil deGrasse Tyson on that once, and he was like, don't forget! Don't forget. She was like, Uhura, she never got to take the helm in the original series. And Scott Mantz like, but in the animated series, she
got to take command
did.
of the whole ship.
You might recall. And Neil deGrasse Tyson's like, shit, really? That was cool. Way to go, Scott. Only person I've known who successfully corrected Neil deGrasse Tyson, so well done.
You know, if you get me and Neil deGrasse Tyson in the same room and we start bandying Trek trivia, I bet I could take him.
Yeah, but that's a good day regardless.
And also,
it doesn't matter if you fail.
Also, I'm well rested, and he's stayed up for 3 days, and he's on acid. Then I could take him.
Then you could totally take him. I believe that. That'd be great.
Probably take him in astrophysics at that point.
So, okay, I've only seen the first episode. You said you love it. I'm totally on board with it. I'm not 100% sure I want to come into CBS All Access though.
I know
that sucks.
It's
a shitty thing to do.
It's like when George Lucas decided to force theaters to buy digital projectors when he released Star Wars Episode 2.
But that's the theaters. We're talking about the audience. The audience has to shell out more than they normally would.
And a lot of theaters were raising their prices because they had to afford these new operating costs to install these new machines.
That's a good point. He was
essentially screwing the audience and the theaters by giving them something they knew they wanted, but kind of withholding it in this weird way. And I think
you have to decide how much you love Star Trek.
Yeah, CBS All Access says, well, we got nobody signing on otherwise, so we got a Star Trek series, guys. It's going to be great, and we're putting a huge amount of money into it.
And as you recall, using Star Trek as the linchpin for your new network always works, like it did with UPN, which lost $1 billion over the course of like 8 years.
Almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion. It was like $890 million.
Reported it was like $890 million.
Yeah, that's how much it lost. All they had was Star Trek. Hardly anything else lasted more than one season on UPN. CBS, I think, has a spin-off of The Good Wife on there, but no one's talking about it. It's not a thing. It's not like I heard people talk about The Good Wife. I've never heard anyone talk about the spin-off.
And one of their selling points is you can watch every Star Trek series, like these 5. There's 6.
Regardless, though, if you care enough about Star Trek,
if you have all those Star Treks already,
if you care enough about Star Trek to want to shell out extra money for Star Trek Discovery, there's a decent chance you've seen all the others,
or at least most of the others.
Yeah.
And they're not. It's not like they're a rare commodity.
I've looked at that service. They have a ton of CBS shows. I'll grant you that. But there's this real fucking danger, and I think it's a huge mistake. FX has just announced they're going to start their own on-demand service, and I'm like, people don't have loyalties to networks. With the exception of maybe HBO, they just care about certain shows that they like. They're not going to watch anything that's on CBS just because it's on CBS. People don't have broken televisions that can't change channel anymore. You don't have a loyalty to a network. You have loyalty to the shows you like.
We couldn't get certain networks because our reception just wasn't good enough growing up. What we're finally moving toward is something I always asked for, actually, in the days of early cable. Because I never had cable TV growing up. I didn't see any of the cable shows. I just had network TV because all we had was an aerial. And then they said, well, you can sign up for cable, but you have to get all the stations. And it's like a huge amount of money per month. It's like, well, I don't want all the stations. I want like 3 stations.
Right.
I want maybe the Independent Film Channel, Cartoon Network, and Comedy Central. And I think that's kind of what we're moving toward is a la carte cable.
Yeah.
And it's on demand now.
But
so you can get all the stations you want by subscribing to each one individually, but the problem with that is the cost is ultimately way, way higher.
That's the problem.
Than just a cable package.
It should be a set amount, and you should be able to pick, but
it's like instead you pay the cable station a set amount and you get 5 or 10 stations.
And it also sucks because it started out as a better service than this. Like Hulu used to have almost every channel on it. At least all the main channels. So if you had a Hulu subscription, you had all the shows, and that was it. That was all you needed. And then they were just like, well, we'd make more money if CBS got its own thing, and so Hulu sucks more, and CBS isn't necessarily worth the money if you don't watch a lot of CBS shows. And now it's
And now they're each selling each of these apps and these streaming a la carte stations are selling their one star show, the one everybody wants to see. Like what's on FX? It's American Horror Story.
Yeah.
HBO is Game of Thrones right now, although they have others.
HBO is the one network where I would actually say they have enough quality content
that they can stay probably on their own.
You can get away with that one. Yeah. All the other networks, I don't need a Fox. I'm not going to pay just for Fox, just for ABC. Every time someone says, "Oh, Disney's going to do their own thing," great. All the other services are going to suck, and I'm going to have to pick and choose, and our selection's going to blow.
It's all going to be out there, but it's all going to be behind a network of paywalls.
If they all agreed to be part of one or even 2 services, that would be better for the consumer. It's good for the people who own the networks.
Which is what happened if you have like Netflix and Hulu,
Yeah.
there you go. You got
That was all you needed. And then it sucks because it's good for the networks and studios, but it's shit for the consumer, and then the consumers are going to flee, and then it's going to be bad for the networks and studios, and they're going to say, oh, well, the next big thing is we're going to put them all together like you should have done in the first fucking place. So just jump to that.
Or the sort of bubble we're living on of like these really, really high budget TV productions.
Yeah.
Like, how much does an episode of Game of Thrones cost? Like
$15 million for the
15
next season.
For a season or for an
Episode.
Per episode.
Yeah.
That's
insane.
That's a feature film. You know,
Well,
that's
like one of the
insane.
stars of Winona Earp tweeted about that because they announced that yesterday. $15 million an episode. Winona Earp was like, next season we're hoping to get a canoe.
Yeah. So I think
They really made me want to watch Winona Earp
and,
now.
you know, even something that's like being vaguely talked about just because it's hot right now, like The Tick.
Yeah.
Even that's
It's
like
on
$15
Amazon.
million an episode.
I don't think that's 15, but it's
pretty-
expensive.
It's an A production.
It's an A production, but most A productions don't cost 15 an episode.
Well, that's true.
Like
But
most A productions are like more like $1 million an episode.
My point is,
which is still a lot.
it's gonna collapse, and we're gonna go back to inexpensive TV at some point,
Only
just
matter
by
of time.
necessity.
But you
there aren't
can't
enough
sustain this
people
stuff.
to keep on watching all these shows to keep the numbers up.
Anyway, we're gone. Oh, bye, Serge.
Oh, goodbye, Sergio.
Okay, he left. I was going to reintroduce him to you. Okay, so Star Trek Discovery, we're on board. I'm debating whether or not I'll pick up All Access, but if we do, I'll probably come
If
back.
you want to come over, you can watch it on my.
That would be cool. No, I'm not going to watch it on your phone. Seems absurd. We'll watch it on your holodeck. So everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more stuff.